Hello, PPAI is pleased to present the online educational program, Character Branding, the 6 Cornerstones of All Successful Brands. My name is Lori Arriganaga, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Please note that today's program is being recorded and all participant phone lines will be muted during this broadcast. Today's presentation will last approximately 60 minutes. You may submit a question or comment at any time during today's presentation using the Q&A window on the lower right-hand side of your screen. Immediately following today's webinar, your screen will be directed to an online survey. Completing this short survey will allow PPAI to continuously improve on our webinars to better meet your needs. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's speakers, Jim Socci, President of Artistic Toy, and Dr. Gary Kaskowitz, Marketing Professor at Moravian College. Without further ado, I give you Jim and Gary.
Great. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori. Welcome.
Before I jump into the details of this webinar, I want to take a minute to thank PPAI and Gary for embracing the vision that I have to help the industry professionals go deeper in their understanding for branding and character. A little background on Gary and I. Gary and I met at a Toastmasters meeting a little over a year ago, and he introduced me to this term called relationship marketing, which is something that I never officially heard before but used many times. As a matter of fact, I'm looking up right now on my computer screen where I have written there, we are a relationship marketing company that specializes in the manufacturing of stuffed plush toys. Our focus is on helping salespeople and their clients recognize the potential of character in marketing. That's something that I've quizzed my internal sales team and my customer service team on for the last 3 years. So the truth is the vision of today's webinar and the series that we're putting on is something that has been happening in my mind over the last 3 years. So I am sincerely grateful to PPAI for sponsoring this webinar and for Gary for allowing me to mentor him in the field of marketing and branding. The goal of today's webinar is to offer one piece of information to each attendee that will allow them to have what I call an aha moment. I found that it's from these moments that we get excited, that we can actually take what was presented and do something with it. Gary shared with me this statistic that the other day that only 3% of what is taught is ever applied. I said, wow, it must be pretty discouraging as a teacher, as a full-time teacher and professor to wake up in the morning sometimes when that's what's really happening is the application is at 3%. So I think that's a little scary factoid for both of us, and to say, you know what, is it the teachers that aren't that good, or is it that what we're teaching is really that interesting? You know, what's the story here? Well, I'm confident that you would not have wasted your time if you weren't sincerely interested in this topic of branding. So that puts a lot of pressure on Gary and I to step up to the plate here and be good teachers. So here is what I'd like to do so you can help us measure our success. If we say something that you like, send a quick instant chat to Lori or send us an email afterwards. I'm going to say if we get less than 3 chats or emails, we can pretty much figure, well, we bombed or we're just about average of everybody else. So I've got remember the aha moments, hit us, tweet us, chat us, and I got my sights set on, 10 people. So I'm really excited. Lori, you better get ready because I'm hoping there's going to be a lot of good things for people to talk about. Now, what is this webinar about? What are you going to learn in the next 60 minutes? We've got, some of the common branding misconceptions, the 3 purposes of brands, practical examples of good branding, using brand knowledge to help you, and the 6 traits of successful brands. So let's begin this journey into branding, or character branding. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Gary Kaskowitz, who's going to start by explaining the problems facing your clients.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Lori. I really appreciate this, and welcome to everybody on this call. This is a topic near and dear to my heart, as Jim mentioned. I love the idea of branding, and the thing that I want to talk about with branding today that I spoke to Jim and Lori about in the past is some of these things that are going on in business in general and how this affects us all as business people and also affects the brands that we do and the branding that we help others do. And with that being the case, a little bit of background I think is important here for all of us, because what we have to recognize is that business has certain common characteristics regardless of the business you are in, and it has certain common characteristics that we're all facing, problems that we are facing, if you will, problems that the people you call upon as distributors or promotional product experts, that they are facing, whether it be big or small. We all face these type of problems. And one of the things that we have to recognize from a business perspective is that the people we sell to, our clients, our customers, our audience, however you like to refer to them, the people we sell to, they have a few common problems, or common, I shouldn't say problems, but common situations that we have to be aware of. The first is that we are facing an ever-growing problem of people's divided attention. We live in a multitasking world. We live in a place where people are walking down the streets texting at the same time they're walking. Customers today, our audience, our clients we sell to, their attention is divided as much as the people that they are selling to. And in small businesses, the customers are divided, their attention is divided, and they're not necessarily thinking about any one of us at any particular point in time. And in fact, we'll talk about this and elaborate a little bit later, but you probably are familiar with the expression of everyone's favorite radio station is WIIFM, i.e. what's in it for me, and that's how we all operate in business and life. We can't help it. We're people and people are people. So the first problem we have to recognize is people's divided attention means that they're not necessarily thinking about us when we'd like them to think about us, and it's something we have to be very wary of. The other problem we face in business, as I was talking with Jim about this, is that businesses today, large and small, have shrinking budgets. It's been especially pronounced over the last 4 to 5 years with the recession. But shrinking budgets mean that you have to make optimal use of your resource expenditures that benefit you and what your mission is for your organization. A lot of people, a lot of businesses don't understand how to take their budgets and effectively spend them. They don't understand where they should put their promotional efforts, so to speak, many times. And because of this, they often make wrong choices. And something we have to be very wary of in business is, are you making the best choice possible with your shrinking budget to help grow your business and get your mission out there? And this is a common problem that all the businesses you call upon are facing. Another problem that they're all facing that we have to be very aware of is that there's a lot of economic uncertainty going hand in hand with number 2. People out there, the people we're calling upon in this industry, they don't really necessarily know what's going to happen any better than anyone else. And because of that, they oftentimes maybe hedge their bet or maybe go back to something they think works but in reality doesn't work. And with that being the case, we have to be very wary of this idea that this uncertainty often causes people to either take wrong action or inaction. And neither of those are good outcomes from a business perspective. So when you're calling on somebody who is facing uncertainty, their natural inclination is to double down on what they're doing oftentimes, which is not necessarily the best for us as other people in B2B trying to sell to them. So that's something else to be aware of. But most importantly, as I mentioned with Jim and others, when I talk to small business owners and business owners in general, business faces what I call an identity crisis. Most business owners, most businesses don't really understand the business that they are in. And this is something which is critical for us to be aware of whenever we work with another business entity to help them with that process, because they don't necessarily understand their own business. They don't know who they are. They may think they know, but in reality they don't, because here is one of the little secrets that we often don't talk about in business, but it's absolutely the case. It doesn't really matter what the business people think they are in. Only their customers can tell them what business they're really in. And so you might be talking to somebody who is a mega corporation or a local plumber. It doesn't matter. They might think that they're selling cellular phone service or plumbing service. Either way, that may or may not be the real case. And what we have to recognize as business owners selling to other business owners is oftentimes the people we're selling to don't even really necessarily know what business they're in. They're in it for their reasons. They're in it because they wanted to change. They're in it for any number of reasons, but they don't really necessarily even know how they're seen by others and therefore how to get their story out effectively. And this is a real problem that I think we all encounter, which is what led Jim and I to start talking initially about these sorts of topics.
Great. Gary, I would agree. Personally, I believe that all of us as in the promotional products industry are continually faced with doing more with less. And when you have to operate from that mode, it's definitely the uncertainty, the fear of the future of a very mature industry that we're in, just it spirals down. And that's why I want to jump right into problems facing promotional consultants. Well, after looking at your slide, I guess we should be glad that we're not our customers and don't have their problems.
That's true.
It's actually almost hard to see the similarity, right? I'm being facetious. Let's face it. You know it, and I know it, that clients are creating all of our problems. And if it weren't for those problems, we would be out of work, and our lives would be a heck of a lot more stressful. The truth is the challenges facing your clients are the same problems facing you. Secretly, these are my problems as well. Don't tell anyone. I have talked to thousands of people in our industry, and I've heard it over and over again. I don't have time for creativity. I don't have time with my decision makers. The margins, where are they going? All these things. It's these same problems that I believe are changing the face of our industry. Business as usual 5 years ago is not business as usual today. Now that drives us to number 4, the fourth point, the identity crisis. I think if you're honest with yourself and I'm honest with myself, we will agree both suppliers and distributors have an identity crisis. Jim, what do you mean an identity crisis? I know who I am. How can you say that I don't know who I am? Listen carefully. You don't know who you are. Don't be upset, though, because there's good news in this. Your clients don't know who they are, and they sure as heck don't know who you are. So, now I'm sure there's a couple of people out there, and like if I might reference one, Joe Scott from Scott & Associates, who actually I really believe he does know who he is. However, the vast majority of us, we don't. In case you're still not with me on this point, follow me in this story. When I entered this industry 8 years ago, people who sold promotional products were referred to as distributors. You could read any industry magazine like Counselor or PPB, and they would refer to promotional product salespeople as promotional product distributors. Today, you pick up the same industry magazines and you learn about this new breed of distributor salesperson that is called a promotional consultant. I love it. I get these emails from promotional consultants, and I know when I get these emails from the promotional consultants because I can see it in their signature line. It says they've given themselves a very creative title, and it's called they use terms like brand maximizer, branding consultant, promotional architect, and chief creative officer. If you have a creative title in your email, that's neat. However, you may be facing an identity crisis. Gary, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, Jim. And you're so right about that.
Okay.
I'm still here. No, I was listening to you. I'm taking notes. You're absolutely so right about that.
Well, that's one part of the identity crisis. The other part is what this does to me as a supplier and why this has become more and more important. This identity crisis is really paramount to me because when I look at my business and who we are, these promotional consultants, these promotional product distributors are my beloved salespeople. And I say that with sincerity. The work that they do puts food on the table of my family. It feeds the families of my employees. And I know for a fact that these promotional consultants, my salespeople, are not treated like beloved salespeople by a majority of the suppliers they work with. And my advice is just very simple, is that, maybe they need to find some new suppliers that can really help them out and help them be, who they want to be. But now that we have successfully completed, I'll say, our market research on what these problems are, and we've identified some of the real problems facing our clients and facing our own personal businesses, now, Gary, we need your help. We need your help to help translate this into the common misconceptions of when we're trying to help. We're out there, these salespeople, my salespeople are out there trying to help clients with their brands. What are they facing when it comes to the misconceptions of branding?
Oh, absolutely, Jim, and that's such a good question because, as you mentioned, so many people do misunderstand branding. It's one of these topics, branding and marketing, that a lot of people like to think that's what they do, and in reality they don't know what it is that they do. Branding has many different levels we'll talk about, but there's some real common problems with that we have to understand before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of it, because if you don't understand where your client is coming from, if you don't understand what they're thinking about you as a promotional products distributor or purveyor and what they actually think about, then you're going to be at a sore disadvantage, because if they don't understand branding, then we're not going to sell to them effectively. So we have to understand what they really know and what they don't know. And one of the first things that we have to understand about the brand myths that are facing your clients, the people you're calling upon, is that these people, the people you're calling upon, these business owners, actually understand what the promotional products role is in their marketing, advertising, and branding efforts. This is crucial. The unfortunate aspect with a lot of business owners, and these are the people you're calling upon, the real problem oftentimes faced is that we assume that they know what it is that we do. And therein lies the real pitfall to all business. If we assume everyone knows what we do, chances are really good we're wrong, because they don't. And in fact, oftentimes they don't know what our products are and how they fit within their roles and their own particular business endeavors. So when they think promotional products, they might think, oh, for example, let me put out and give a pen or a USB stick or a stuffed animal in your case, and this is going to solve all my problems. People will be aware of who I am, and therefore I'm going to get all this business. And may or may not be the case, probably not the case necessarily, because they don't have necessarily a coherent strategy behind it. And without that strategy behind their promotional endeavors, then it doesn't matter, because there's a thing we talk about in marketing called the resource advantage. And what that says is if you have the most resources and the most money, you can play that game. You can just bury the industry in products and name logos, if you will. And by that definition, people will think of you when they think of something. Majority of business does not operate that way. That's the crucial factor here. Majority of business does not have that advantage to just bury the marketplace in their logos. So what we have to do is be strategic about it. And these customers that we sell to, they have to be strategic about it as well. We have to show them how we can be strategic, or how they can be strategic by using products properly. Most of the time they totally get it wrong. It's not what they think it is. The product that they use has to serve for a bigger purpose, something beyond just getting my name out there as a logo. That is so wrong, and that's something we have to be very, very aware of when we talk to these people and you're calling on your clients. The other thing that we have to be very aware of when you call upon your clients is that the customers that you call upon and their customers in turn actually think logically. And this is something which I often say, and people sometimes get a little upset with me when I say, well, no one actually thinks logically. But in the marketing world and the branding world, that really is kind of the case. People don't think logically. None of us really do. We like to think we do. But when it comes to purchasing, we oftentimes, more often than not, tend to buy on emotion or some other reason. And then we justify it with our logic afterward. And this is so important to understand, because the people we're calling on as promotional product distributors, if that's what you're doing, they aren't necessarily thinking logically about what they're doing and what you're doing for them. So if you need to appeal to them in a different way, you need to show them how their brand is actually an appeal to their audience, their customers, at a whole different level than what they might think it is. Because it's not logic, it's usually a story or emotion or something else. And another real key misconception is back to that you need a lot of money to build your brand. And this is what I call the television trap, if you will. What happens here is what we do is we tend to follow those that we see examples of if we're in business. So if I own a business and I own a plumbing supply or electrical or a garden supply or whatever, or a restaurant, I'm going to model those that I see examples of, which usually are my biggest competitors in an industry, in a category space. And because of that, what I need to say is, oh, do I really need to have a television commercial out there during the Super Bowl because Budweiser does it? Well, no, you don't, because that's probably not going to be a good use of your resources and of your money. If you are properly building your brand, it's not really coming down to the dollars and cents. It's not coming down to how much money do you spend. It comes down to how are you spending your money effectively. And the money is where you have to be really careful. We have this thing that I mentioned to Jim the other day, and as an accountant, I think he kind of got a kick out of this, is the idea of what we call marketing math. And with marketing math, what that says is a lot of people, a lot of business owners, they make the wrong decisions in terms of money and how they spend it. And they think they have to spend money when they don't, or they don't spend money when they should. It's the equivalent of if I say, oh, I'm going to buy X dollars of promotional products. These products work great. Why do I spend my budget? It's like, well, no, no, no. If they work great, keep spending it. But people oftentimes don't test. You don't really need the money necessarily, but you do have to make sure you have a coherent strategy, and that's what it really comes down to, which all leads into the whole idea of number 4, which is highlighted here, in that the clients that you call upon, they think they understand the business they're in. And that is usually a misconception, because just like we're saying that, we don't necessarily know, people don't necessarily know what business they're in, they don't necessarily know what their customers really truly think of them. They may think they're selling X and their customers think they're selling Y. I think that I'm selling you a beverage. In reality, I'm selling you something, you're seeing it as I'm selling you a way to have a conversation with your friends and family. And so there's any number of things that we have to understand from a branding perspective. It's not just logos. It's not just whoever pumps the most money into it wins. It really is the case of let's be smart, let's be strategic, let's tell a story with our brand, and make sure our brand is in alignment with what our customers actually want. Because if we don't do that, then we're leading ourselves down a path of what we would say in marketing terms of just being a convenience product where we're interchangeable, lowest cost provider wins, and that's basically a recipe for disaster, because chances are really good, unless you are the 800-pound gorilla, you're out of business. And this is what we have to show clients when you call upon them, how they cannot be the one that gets squashed by the 800-pound gorilla, but they can succeed in their own right by properly understanding branding.
Great. Hey, Gary, I really appreciate that. The marketing math is really one of my favorite quotes from you, and I love that because I can probably tell you at least 1 or 2 times in the last week where I've gotten that response or that objection from the client that it's not in the budget, and then they've come back and they've actually spent more than was in their budget when they found the right product and they had the reason and the purpose behind it. So, again, maybe it's part of not understanding their business, but not knowing that people don't make decisions about their marketing typically based on their budget. So I just wanted to drive that point home. And then quickly follow up with the brand myths facing you as promotional consultants. You can see I put here promotional products equals branding, marketing equals branding, advertising equals branding. That's not true. Recently I attended a local business networking meeting where I happened to run into a promotional consultant. I've worked with her company before, however, not with her. It's a great company, but as we were asked to introduce ourselves and give our elevator pitch, I counted at least 3 times she used the word in her introduction. In my opinion, she was confusing with the word brand with promotional products, and it really didn't help anyone understand what she really did. We are in an industry where the majority of professionals feel they can interchange the word brand or branding with promotional products, marketing, and advertising. The truth is, branding is completely different. And so since marketing and advertising and branding is mysterious work to many people, it really doesn't confuse them. And really, it doesn't make you feel awkward when you interchange that word branding. So many people, not many people, will stop you and say, so what really is branding? What's behind that? They would just treat you kind of like Charlie Brown's teacher, I'd say. They kind of zone you out. They,
yeah, exactly.
Keep on talking, but they're not listening. I have found that more promotional consultants are using the word branding because it sounds and it sort of feels more like a higher purpose type of marketing and advertising than maybe promotional products. I've seen this a number of times. To cite specifically, Geiger advertises in PPB magazine and Counselor magazine, and they've coined the word brandspiration. That's awesome. How they took the word branding and inspiration and made them their own word. And it's through, reading those advertisements, working with, great people at Geiger and realizing that everyone in our industry recognizes the future of our industry is going to be built on more than delivering printed products. And I know promotional products industry is a very mature industry, which means we have a lot of people who have been selling printed products for years and years. They have relationships with key people at top organizations and provide a great service to them with, they deliver high-quality printed products, it's on time, and it's at a great price. These people are very, they have a very, very, very important decision to make. And that decision is, do I keep doing what I'm doing and continue to sell, say, $750,000 of printed products every year, or in hope that I can take it to $1 million next year, or pray that it just doesn't fall below $500,000? Your decision comes down to this, and that's the last point here in understanding your business. Do I understand that the business I'm in is selling printed products, or am I in the business of helping businesses tell a better story? The choice is up to you. However, I believe the latter promises much greater rewards personally, professionally, and financially.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Jim.
So let's jump over to the next slide, the real purpose of brands.
Certainly. Yeah, the real purpose of brand, and this is where it gets very interesting, because branding does have a long and illustrious history, as Jim's been talking about, but the reality for today is it's changed, and a lot of us don't recognize that. Brands originated quite simply to distinguish ourselves, to identify and differentiate ourselves, the first two of these purposes of brands. It came along years and years ago, back in the Roman days, actually, when you'd be walking down this market and you wanted to know who was selling the particular piece of oil or wine or something, you would brand it, and back to cattle days. So you can say, this is mine, this is not yours, and identification and differentiation. Unfortunately, most people today still think that's the sole purpose of a brand, and the reality is, as we've been talking about, nothing is really further from the truth, because let's play this to its logical conclusion if we say that. If all it comes down to is my brand is a way for me to get my name out there, for me to put out my logo, or for me to put out my my design or my trademark or whatever it is I'm trying to get you aware of, that's all well and good. But that basically says what I'm relying upon is that when you want to make a purchase, you think of me. Well, let's take this in today's confusing world, a crowded marketplace of ideas and marketplace of advertisements. The average person sees anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 advertising messages in any given day. So what you're basically saying is, of those 5,000 messages you're getting, I want to be enough of them, enough impressions, so that when they think of buying X, they think of me. Well, that's all well and good, but that goes back to our point from before. That presupposes that you have the money, or what we call the resource advantage, to actually make that happen, that you have better distribution, that you have better money to buy more logos or whatever you happen to, more impressions. The reality is a lot of people don't have that. And so when you play that game, that's a real problem, because if you do that, you're always going to compete in that sandbox of who has the most toys out there to prevail. That's oftentimes not the case. Now, you need to have toys out there. Don't get me wrong. As promotional consultants, people do need your products, but the products have to be used strategically, because it's not just going to be, oh, if I put 5,000 of these out there, the market will love me. Maybe, probably not, is more reality, because, yeah, it identifies you, but it's not really telling me as the customer anything. Hand in hand with this is the other part of it, the other edge of that sword, if you will, of not just being able to keep up with it, but the market has tuned out to that. People as consumers tune out to this prevalence. They tune out to the messaging. It becomes a vicious cycle. We ignore it, and when we see it, we tend to discount it, because we say to ourselves, oh, that's not really important to me, because as a customer, I'm thinking of myself and my own story. Because I'm thinking of myself and my own story, I'm not necessarily paying to all your impressions you're putting out there to try to tell me about your brand, unless your brand resonates with my story. And so what we have to find out as people selling to anybody, the real purpose of a brand is to tell your story. It's to be congruent and to really tell your story in a very effective, strategic manner, so that your customers, your audience, buys into it and says, yeah, I like that. I want to support that. I agree with that story. And then now we can start talking the real power of brands, because now I have you as a true partner with me, as a relationship, as Jim and I talked about earlier. Now we have that actual distinction. The idea here is what brands really need to do, the third purpose of them, is to build value, to showcase the value in the mind of the customer, to show the customer, the audience, here's what I represent, here's what you get from doing business with me, here's how you benefit, because it's all about you at the end of the day. It's not about me as a business, it's about you as a customer, because that's how we're all thinking regardless. And I just recognize here's what my brand does for you. It's a true value statement. The analogy I was talking with Jim the other day about this is the idea of too many people confuse the brands and the logos and the impressions with their tools. And what most people get wrong is it's not the tool, it's the technique. We were talking about building something. I'm saying, no, I'm two left thumbs. You give me a hammer and nails, it's a great tool, but whatever I build is going to look like pretty rough. It's not going to be really well-defined, nothing you'd want to take home and live in or use for a table or whatever, because I just can't build for squat. And so because of that, I have a hammer, I have nails. Someone would say, oh, well, the tool doesn't work then because look how shoddy that piece of work was. Like, no. It's not the hammer's fault. It's not the nail's fault. I didn't have the right approach in using that hammer and nails to build the proper outcome. Take that same hammer and nails and put it in the hands of a master carpenter, that person is going to now have a beautiful building, a beautiful table, a beautiful bench that's going to last for generations. It's not the tools, it's the technique, and that's the same for branding. When it comes to branding, if you truly understand the value and what it really does, it's not the brand tools, it's how it's used. And so what we have to be very aware of when you're a promotional consultant is when you talk to people and try to help them recognize the importance of their brand, they have to be very aware that it's not necessarily the tool, it's how they use that tool strategically. That's what's going to set them apart and set you apart.
Yeah, Gary, if I could just, I want to just drill that home. I mean, if you look at, I see the advertisement in the PPB magazine for promotional products work, and you see some of those statistics touted, 88% of the people that use promotional products recalled their advertiser, and 85% of the people did business with a brand after receiving the product. It's like, wow, that's amazing. But I got to believe that the companies and the people they surveyed were given those products or distributed those products in a very, very effective manner. They were the master carpenters. And I believe that's why they got the kind of results they did because, let's face it, clients or people could just buy, products and find a way to print them and then, again, fail on the execution, on the distribution.
Exactly right.
I think that all ties in very nicely to the real purpose of the brands. I wanted to jump over next to what is a brand. Gary, I think you did, a great job of explaining, what is a brand, but at the same time, I want to make sure we give our salespeople on this call, the Wikipedia definition number one, but more than that, Wikipedia tells us that brand is the name, the term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's product distinct from another seller's. Initially, like you said, historically, branding was adopted to differentiate other people's cattle. The distinctive symbol burned with a hot iron stamp, and et cetera, et cetera. I love this in accounting because that's my background as being a CPA. A brand is defined as an intangible asset and is the most valuable asset on a corporation's balance sheet. Interestingly enough, you can only value a brand that's been bought. And so until you actually, the company is sold, there's no way to really get this tangible value for that brand. The word brand itself is frequently used as a substitute word to refer to companies that have a strong identity. I think we're saying this a lot today. That's all well and good. However, these definitions, honestly, they don't do it for me. So I borrowed, something that I read in your book, actually, Gary, and that's what I have up here on the screen. It's brand. What is it? It has a purpose. It's always changing, never wavering. It helps people make decisions quickly. So, it's to me, the part of that definition is part two that really resonates and really excites me is always changing, never wavering.
Absolutely.
To me, that is character, and that's how I've, kind of come up with this vision of character branding. That ability you've got to be flexible. You've got to adapt. You're always changing, but you're never wavering in who you truly are. And that's why when you look at the top brands in this country, the top companies in this country, it's those companies that they're over time, they're just always going to be there, 100+ years, 200 years, whatever. You know, look at the Coca-Colas of the world. That they embody, you know, what really is a brand. They give us such an example. And this translates, obviously character translates very personally to me, an artistic toy, because as you may have noticed in my logo, you'll see the statement, helping you build character. So that is where I believe the rubber meets the road. It's practical application. We've got to take these things that we've learned and see them being used and recognize that they're being used. So Gary, let's jump right into our first successful example of branding.
My favorite. Jim knows this is one of my favorite examples of all. As you're looking at, we see a picture of Disney World with all the characters. And one of the things I want to follow up on with what Jim just mentioned with the notion of character, this ties in very well with the notion of branding. Character can be defined in a couple of different ways. The way that Jim talked about, which is absolutely true, which is the notion of not wavering, what I call in my work the notion of congruence, that you are known for something and people know what you are known for. And that is really important to have in your brand. Your brand needs to be known for something. What is it you're known for? Character, interesting though, can also be defined in the notion of character like you'd see in a story. And one of the things I love with this example of Disney and Walt Disney World and all the Disney success is they've managed to do this incredibly successfully, models that we can learn from. I know we're not multi-billion-dollar businesses, but we can still learn from the masters of how they've done it and what we can learn, take away from that, because they use character both in terms of total consistency, total congruence, but also the notion of really drawing you in as your own character in your life's journey, in your life story, and they are so hand in hand with that. I love the Disney example because on any given day, if you go to Walt Disney World for, down in Florida, 70% of the guests there that you see on any given day are repeat customers. They just come back over and over and over. And when you go there and you experience this whole notion of how they build their brand, what a company like that does well that we can all do from a strategy perspective is they have really understood the mind of their customer, what really motivates their customer. It's not just, rides and thrill rides, because we can go to Six Flags or any other number of places for that sort of opportunity. But what they really understand is this notion of they connect you to each other, they connect you to your family, they connect you to your own past, and they use the Disney brand to bring all of this together. And so what Disney has done successfully, and lessons we can take away from them, if you will, are the ideas of everything is consistent, everything has character, as Jim says, and everything actually is spoken of in terms of character. So imagine that you go to Disney World and you go on one of the rides and you buy essentially one of their promotional products, which is, say, a Mickey Mouse doll. Things that set you back $25, $30, and people don't think twice about it because they're so enthralled with that whole connection to the brand, where the products that they acquire and that we take home from the Disney help us relive our brand experience over and over and over. And that is, to me, an incredibly strategic use of a brand, where I can get you to come to my products, I can get you to buy my theme parks, my movies, and I can help you sell my message by taking it home and sharing it with others and helping spread my brand even further, so it's totally viral at that point. So there's a lot of things we can learn from this experience, but the two key points, as Jim alluded to, character in terms of what are you all about, what do you stand for, being totally congruent with that, and people knowing what they're getting, not vacillating from it. And secondly, character in terms of what is the story you're telling in the minds of your customers. And when you're selling promotional products to a customer, to another business, what's the story they're telling their customers, and how can your products help them tell that story better? And that, to me, are some of the key takeaways that we can learn from the Disney experience that we can translate into the line of work that we all do day to day.
Great. Thank you, Gary. I'm going to go over to another successful brand. This brand I've had some personal experience with. It's a successful gaming company. Now, this is a brand may not be popular to some of you, because I'm going to assume that you are not in their demographic for this product. Also, I want to say that because we've, using them as an example, we're not endorsing their product by any means, because I guess you can say, for anyone that does know of this brand, they are certainly for mature audiences, and their brand purpose and their identity, may not appeal to you and me or me either, but that doesn't matter. This gaming company has become extremely successful because they realized that creating dangerous, adventurous type games, that really appeals to people. It really draws them in. So you may look at this company and say, oh, they build computer programs, but their marketing department, their brand consultant, their brand maximizer is sitting back saying, you know what, they're really in the business of helping people seek out dangerous adventures. And these people can have these dangerous adventures and without going to jail. That's the beauty, and that's what's really appealing to a broader part of this market, or their market, their demographic. They've made bad behavior fun and acceptable. They're taking their brand purpose, this danger seeking, and decided to use promotional products to make their customers go even deeper, to have a deeper connection with these feelings of fame, of cash, and entourage, and becoming a rock star. And believe it or not, I believe that's the name of the company, I believe, is Rockstar. Each one of their characters has a story. One of those characters that we've had the pleasure of working with is Chop. He's the stuffed Rottweiler, the Rottweiler dog. The way the story goes, as I understand it, is that this dog smuggles drugs in discrete areas of his anatomy. And if you want to know more about Chop, and I can direct you to some YouTube videos so you can see how Chop works. But the point is, Chop is a character with a purpose that people like and they remember. So out of all the products this company could select to put in their new release of version 5 of the software, their swag package to their rock stars, their closest 2,500 fans and gaming stores, Chop was a natural fit for the 5th release. My employees recently told me that they saw Chop on eBay selling for over $150. Wow, that's the power of a brand. It's just a stuffed toy. It costs less than $10 to make it. But these raving fan customers, he is everything. As you can imagine, we are working with a strong brand that has built a community that understands the yearnings of its customers. Dollars and common sense thinking sometimes doesn't make sense anymore. These companies and customers will waste money to get what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. I think of this order in particular. They wanted a couple hundred of these dogs airshipped in advance. The air freight itself cost more than the dog, but to the right people, the cost was not a factor. I think you get the idea. This is all, again, well and good. However, if I was you, I would be saying to myself, how does this apply to the small local business in my town? So I selected a small business in my town that recently got my attention. This case study does not involve any promotional products that I'm aware of at this point. However, I'm sure it could. So here's the story about this local restaurant in our town and how they've demonstrated to me that they have actually mastered branding. And I want to say some people just understand this inherently. I believe it's like a way of thinking. So here's why. About a year ago, a man and his wife purchased this 230-year-old restaurant. As you can imagine, it's changed owners probably 20 times. No big deal, right? Well, what makes this restaurant a successful brand now is the owners understand that dinner is not what really is serving dinners to people at a fair price, a great tasting steak at a reasonable price, isn't really drawing people to this restaurant. They understand that the business that they're in is entertainment. You might have think, hey, maybe they hired a band or something, or they got a karaoke night. No, they went way, 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 way beyond that. If you go to the Buckeye Tavern's website or you see their menu, you can join their email community, and you'll find that from time to time that they're going to have the Philadelphia Eagles leading wide receiver Deshaun Jackson there, or Shady McCoy, the star running back, who will sign autographs. You'll find that they named in their menu they've named famous people, certain items from famous people, like the Neil Diamond steak. And by the way, you can win a trip to go see Elton John in the Billy Joel concert. Maybe they'll run a bus trip. Different things like that. So here's the background. The people that bought this restaurant just over a year ago, his former experience, he was a sports agent. He gets tickets. He understands this, hey, how to make people feel important, how to entertain them, how to show them a good time. That's what is one of the things that makes this a successful brand. But it's more than that, and I'm going to tell you this story. So last month, I get a copy of our Township magazine, small magazine, just everybody in our township, and on the cover of this magazine is the owner of the Buckeye Tavern, and he's pointing up to a picture of the 200-year-old restaurant, maybe one of the first pictures that was taken. So you go inside, you read the article, you see more pictures, and you find out that his employees, a number of people, have said that his restaurant is haunted. There are people that have witnessed bar stools moving, and there's some employees that work up in the office in the upstairs. They won't go upstairs after 6 p.m. because they swear there's ghosts and spirits in there. So what did this owner do? He put a plaque on the bar stool that moves and called it Screaming Susan, and he also named a drink after her. As you can see, these are all the things that give the Buckeye Tavern its unique identification. And they really don't cost anything because they've determined, they made a conscious decision to be on purpose about entertaining people. And it's exactly what people want when they go to a restaurant. They want to be entertained. They want to get away from life for a while. They also want that great steak at a reasonable price, but they want a little bit more. And I think that is the challenge that is out there for each of us as we start looking at the businesses and our customers, our personal businesses and our customers' businesses in the same manner as the Buckeye Tavern. I don't know about you, but if I found out that the restaurant I purchased, it was haunted, I'd probably be thinking about selling it again. Hello?
Jim?
Hello?
I hear you now.
You hear me now? I'm sorry about that. Okay, let me just jump back in there. So I heard something cut out. I apologize. So where I was going with this was, hey, if you and I bought a restaurant that we found out was haunted, we'd probably think about reselling it. But if you're the Buckeye Tavern and you're on purpose about entertaining people, then you embrace it and you make it part of your brand. And you know that, and what you end up doing is you find out there's another haunted old restaurant down the street, or in the next town over, called the Iron Horse, that claims to be haunted, and you make plans to take over that restaurant as well, because they're using their situation, they're having fun, and they're making a great brand out of it. Mm-hmm. Now let's transition into this newfound branding knowledge. We need to transition this, right? We're hearing all these great stories, but how can this help a promotional consultant? Gary, what are some of your thoughts for our salespeople?
Well, there's a lot of things that need to be done, Jim, and this is something which, again, for everyone listening to this, the promotional consultants out there, always remember there are two sides to this whole aspect of branding. We have the brands that we are of our customers that we sell to, the clients that we sell to, so the business owners and whomever. So the ones who are buying the products, they have a brand to sell, which is where we've been focusing quite a bit of this on. But also we have our own brand as the consultant to that person of how they can share their brand. And with this being the case, there's a couple of things that we have to be aware of. First of all, we have to recognize that brands do tell the story, that brands are that promise of value. And we have to determine for ourselves as consultants, if you're a consultant, what is your value to the customer you're selling to? And then in turn, because oftentimes the business owner that you're selling to won't necessarily understand his or her value for their own business, you have to show them how they create their value through your products, through their brands, through your brand. And so that's the key to it. And the whole point with this, as you say on the slide here, Jim, is you have to really show that character. You have to really show that here's the story, here's how it all relates, and most importantly, it has to be done in a relatively straightforward and fast manner, so that way when somebody sees your brand, or conversely you sell them a product and the customer of yours buys a product and their customers see it, they understand right away, what is this company about? Boom, connect me at that deep emotional level, and I'm off to the races. And that is one of the really key things to understand, the two sides of the coin, our brand, your brand that you're selling to.
Thanks, Gary. I still think that there's some people on this call that don't know how they're going to go out, how they're going to walk away from this call and say, I just spent an hour, 15 minutes, and how am I going to start applying this? This is all well good. Maybe they're out there just shaking their head, going, yeah, I get it. That's great. Boy, that's fascinating. Wow, that's a good truth. But I want to make this real.
Absolutely.
So literally this morning, I had my own aha moment, and I want to share it with you all. I got out of my car, and I thought, I really need to get my oil changed. And I thought to myself, it's kind of a pain. I need to do it, but I'm really busy right now. I got this webinar, I got to do for character branding. So I started thinking. So I said, I got to start thinking of the reasons of why I need to start doing, get this oil change. And I started thinking about the guys down at Gene's Quick Lube. And I every time they're great guys. I go down there. I talk to them a little bit. They tell me how their business is doing, and they always tell me, business is slow, blah blah blah. Okay, great. So I decided, I need to go down there, and I need to, shed some light on, maybe instead of just agreeing with them, I'm going to maybe say something to them. I'm going to give them a recommendation. So I've been, been going down there for 5 years. So they know that they sell toys and all that, and so I'm very comfortable making this recommendation to them. I'm going to say to them, I looked at your sign out front, and they're in a great location. It's a traffic light. There's thousands and thousands of cars that go by their location every day. There's no reason they shouldn't be jammed. Their sign out front on there, it says, "We put the quick in quick loop. We aim to serve." Wow, that tells me a lot about why I should stop in there, right? So I'm going to say, hey, guys, why don't you put on your sign, get more miles per gallon in 10 minutes? Or here's another idea for you. Get 100,000 miles on your tires when you service here. Or how about improve your car's braking ability? Stop in and see how. See, the problem with Gene's Quick Lube, and the problem that I think we all have, is that Gene understands how to, change an oil. I don't know how to change an oil. It doesn't matter. But we have to kind of re-explain it. Why should somebody come in and pay them the attention? We do these things every day. I am confident that there's a good population of drivers on the road that don't know that if they keep their tires at the right pressure for the season, they're going to get better gas mileage, they're going to get more miles on their tires, and they're going to improve their braking ability by 500 feet. Let's face it, that information could be life or death for some people. Getting your oil changed at Gene's Quick Lube all of a sudden is a little bit more important. If I was Gene and his crew, and I started telling this, that kind of story about how they're helping people, I'm confident that he's going to start having more steady flow of business because he's out there now. He's serving them. He's going beyond the $20 oil change. Also, that good old Gene doesn't have to, just for the promotional. Let's connect this to the promotional product now. I bet if I was sold all types of promotional products, I could go to Gene and say, hey, Gene, what do you think about, you tried this campaign and now you got all these people coming here. What do you say you give them a tire gauge with your logo on it? Would that be a good idea? Really reinforcing, driving home his brand message with a product. That this is, I hope, listen, we have to look at this as an opportunity here. And this exists. This is the branding mentality. And I think once we get it, you get it, however you want to say it, there is a huge opportunity. So that's my aha moment that I want to share with you because I want to keep this presentation real. I also want to encourage you to try this way of thinking with your customers and your friends to learn, to learn about what they really do. What do you really do? And to see where the opportunities are to help them create a better story that helps them and you build the brand that they want. I encourage you to stay tuned for this entire webinar series because I plan on giving you an update on what Gene decides to do with his quick lube, and hopefully he takes my idea here, and we'll get to see if it has a real impact. So I believe wholeheartedly that the future of promotional products is helping your customers and the prospective customers think of their businesses differently and build their brands.
Absolutely true. With that being the case, Jim, I just want to touch upon what you said there, the actual tangible aspect of what we should do, what we can do, what you can do today when you hang up from this call. And that ties in perfectly with what you just said because as you alluded to before, I did write a book about branding, about essentially this is called Brand It Like Barack, and was about President Obama's 2008 election and how he came from nowhere to win the presidency. Now, just to assuage any misconceptions, this book is not a political book whatsoever. There's no politics discussed at all. It's strictly a marketing and branding book using Obama's 2008 campaign as a case study because what I found fascinating at the time was that when Obama came onto the scene and announced his candidacy, about 40% of the American population had never heard of the man, and 9 months later he's elected president. So that shows you the power of building a brand, building it quickly, and making that how much power you can get from a successful brand strategy. Because we are running against time here, I will go through this quickly, but I want to make an offer to everybody listening to this program, this webinar, that if you want to have a copy of this book, just send me an email and I'll send you a free electronic version of it so you can read it. There's a lot more details in here than I have time to go into at the moment. But the key takeaway from this is dealing with what you just mentioned, Jim, what I call in my work as product as prop, where if you can figure out how your product, whatever you sell, is a prop to somebody else's journey, their personal brand, if you will, that's where the gold is. Like you talked about jeans, this is where we all have that idea. How do I position myself, my product, whatever I sell, as a prop to your story? And there are 6 fundamental characteristics that we all go through with this. I gave it the acronym BARACK to come along with Barack Obama, but the basic role here is real quite simple. The first is what we mentioned, belief in yourself. And what that basically says, you need to be able to really understand what you are about. What is it that you believe in yourself? You have to have this total empathy for your customer and your customer's well-being, that whole notion of relationship that we talked about before. If you understand what's going to help your customer get ahead, then you can position yourself to be their confidant, to be their person, which really truly get them to that point. So believe in yourself, believe in your customer is a good one. Audience understanding, know them, know who you're selling to, know what motivates them, know what their real story is. What do they see as their mission? What do they see as their journey? And conversely with that, what is your role in that journey? How can you position your product, your company, yourself as a product to their journey? Because that's the crucial point here. So if I'm selling tire gauges to jeans, I'm positioning myself as a prop to his journey. If I'm selling stuffed animals to Geico Insurance, that's a whole different way I'm going to position myself as part of their journey. And they in turn are positioning their journey to their customers, which goes hand in hand with the 4th P that I call aspiration delivery. And what that basically says is we all are motivated once more by emotion, not logic. We're motivated by what we want to get, by desire. In marketing and in branding, we all know this. We all know that people are motivated by desire, by what they want. And our job is to speak that symbolic language, that ability to talk to you at a emotional level, symbolic level, a level that goes right to your first brain and really relates to you, taking out all the logical filters. Once again, promotional consultants are so poised to do this because think of all the products that you represent and the impact that can have just to short circuit right through somebody's brain and emotions of what they brand can really stand for. So if you come across as a good consultant, a brand consultant, really helping somebody tell their story better, you can really help them deliver on their aspirations, delivery to their customers, and now you're talking real gold here. And this all comes together with the last few things we've actually mentioned before. Everything has to be congruent. Everything has to hang together. You have to have the character, as Jim mentioned. You have to show your brand, and in turn, audiences have to show their brand as it all comes together. Everything I do is resonant. Everything I do makes perfect sense and ties together. And that's the beauty of congruence. We have to make sure that all these things hang, everything we do. Are we just going in there taking an order? Because if so, that probably won't be as effective as let me go in there and be a real consultant for you. Let me go in there and help you with your strategy. Maybe give you articles and newsletters and tips of how you can grow your brand through these products that I represent. And that would be a much more powerful brand for yourself, helping them in turn create a more powerful brand for their business, which leads to the last piece to this, the Kindle of the community. When you do this successfully and you're a successful brand, the community takes off and helps take over, and they say, wow, you are so good. I want to help spread your message because you mean something to me, and Joe, you mean something to me as well, therefore you really should use product X. And once you get to that point with yourselves as branding consultants, with yourselves as promotional consultants, then you are having the real power because people will help you do the selling for you. And if you put this all together, it comes up with a very powerful system. And as I mentioned, I really did just scratch the surface of it here, but if you do want to read the book, just send me an email. My contact information is on this presentation, and I'll be happy to get you a copy just so you can kind of read it more at your leisure and find out even more specific tactics that you can deploy to help build your brand more strongly.
Awesome. Gary, I want to thank you because I read your book, and it's become sort of a little bit of my textbook, and I really appreciate and honored to have you on board and sharing that with my industry counterparts, my sales people, if you will, and getting this information out to them. Free PDF copy. It's fantastic read. I know that Lori wants to take some questions. I know we've just crossed over an hour. So I'm going to let Lori direct us in the Q&A.
All right. So since we are out of time, we'll only be able to take a few questions. And the first one is, how do you get your clients to buy into your value if they don't understand branding in the first place?
Excellent question. Jim, you want me to take that, or do you want it?
You can take that one, Gary.
Okay, excellent. That's a really good question. And what you have, it comes down to education, Lori, at the end of the day, because most of the people that you're probably calling upon don't necessarily really understand branding and marketing strategically themselves. So what I would advocate is you're the expert yourself. You learn what you can about branding and how to help others with it, and then you show them how what you do ties into it. So for example, in Jim's case, if I'm selling toys and I represent somebody, I'm selling toys and I'm buying them, here, boom, I go, and I'm calling on a local pizzeria, as an example. How can I understand? Well, they don't understand real branding. How can they take their message for their customers? How can a toy represent that? So maybe it would be, what they really represent is a community gathering place, and they don't get that. And I can show them how they can take my toys that I sell to become a representative of that community gathering place for the families and the friends getting together. So perhaps I'll create some type of special toy for the pizzeria that I'm going to give a special name. This is Tony the Tortoise. Tony the Tortoise likes to slow down and spend time with his family. And by buying this product, you can now show how when you give this product out, people take a moment to slow down, come to Tony's to have some pizza, and bring their Tony the Tortoise. And if they bring Tony the Tortoise with them, they can also have 10% off their order. But the whole thing is, what you need to do is think like a marketer yourself, and then as Jim was alluding to with the people he's worked with, show them how they can think more like marketers by using your product, by using what you have to help them make their product stronger.
Yeah, and Gary, I would just follow that up with, it's about telling them the story.
Mm-hmm.
It's as easy as that. I mean, I think salespeople, historically, the very best ones that I've worked with are good storytellers, and it's about maybe rethinking of different stories that apply to different businesses or clients and customers that they work with, and showing them the value of how you understand their business and how you may be able to help them and create a better story.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions unless you see any that have come in through the private chat on your end.
Nope, I haven't seen any others. Lori, I just wanted to, just say that we're having the next series 2 of the webinar is titled "Learn to Speak the Inner Language of Your Clients," and that will be coming up, I believe, on December 19th. Is that correct?
It is actually December 11th at 1:30 p.m. Central Time.
December 11th. Fantastic, another Wednesday. And we will, in summary, learning to speak the inner language of your clients, what motivates you and your clients. Every brand has a core story. We've talked a little bit about that. But when it's told properly, it's the emotional fuel that takes them to the top of their industry. No one likes to be sold anything. However, we love to buy. Getting in touch with your client's core story, their emotions and psychology, is what makes marketers or salespeople, it takes them, from good to great. The one thing holding us back or pushing us forward in our dreams is the story that we have about why we can't have it or what we're willing to do to get what we want. Join us to tap into the internal motivation of your clients.
All right, so at this time I'd like to offer a special thanks to our presenters, Jim Socci and Gary Kaskowitz, for sharing their expertise and ideas today. Today's program is copyrighted and all rights reserved by Promotional Products Association International. This concludes today's program, and thank you everyone for your participation.
Thank you.